Are you trying to figure out how and what to write in order to rank higher on Google? Well, here's a complete lesson and checklist for on-page SEO. Right, I am super excited about making this video because it's been long in the making. I'm going to tell you in a minute exactly why, but before that, let me tell you a little bit about myself. I am what's called a traffic manager in Decathlon, Sweden. Decathlon is the world's biggest sports company. We sold more than 1 billion sports product last year. And I am the one who's taking care of the SEO and the digital marketing in Sweden, in Decathlon. And every day I look through tons and tons of SEO content, and I'm trying to figure out exactly what kind of digital marketing works best for our company. And since this is being filmed during the coronavirus outbreak, it means that I work from home and I have a lot of spare time. So I'm filling it with just creating a content-based blog about soundproof. I'll tell you exactly why I decided to work with soundproofing a little later on. But the point is that I have hired 7 or 8 content writers, and I am teaching them exactly the same stuff that I'm going to be teaching you throughout this video and a couple of upcoming videos. What you need to think about when you are writing content. You will notice after this video that you can scroll through pretty much any text online, and you will basically see immediately whether this is going to rank or not. Especially if you get used to it and you've written 1 or 2 articles yourself, you'll get the hang of it, I promise. So before I go through the checklist, I wanted to show you a good example of what on-page SEO is. Now you can take pretty much any article that is in a highly competitive niche. For example, drones, yoga, weightlifting, and pretty much any subject where there are thousands of people who have already written about it. Now if I take a look at the first result, we can see that the title, How to Lose Weight Fast, 3 Simple Steps Based on Science. Just the title itself tells you exactly what you're going to get, and it also is kind of enticing, and it makes people actually want to click on it because it also sounds like it's a very simple article that anybody can understand. The text here is chunked up. It means that there are not just huge walls of text that you need to read. If I put this on a small device, on a cell phone, it should not look like there's too much huge text to read. It's all very nicely and neatly cut up. We have bullet points, easy to read summaries, and it's very nicely structured that we have one title here and then a subtitle, protein, and the next one is going to be fat, vegetables. Yes. Now, also, the language level is very important here. I, for instance, had no idea what a healthy fat is, but I just have to look here and I can see, oh, it's coconut, avocado oil, and butter. All right, I get it. So for somebody like me who doesn't know much about weight loss and what to eat properly and so on, I feel like this is going to be very easy for me to consume. What else? They're using bolding and a lot of outgoing links that can help me for further reading. And the text is also very long. It's about 2,000 words. So it has a lot of good things going for it. The reason why this article was ranking on the top of Google and not any of the other thousands was probably because this was very easy to understand. It was very shareable. I could probably share this with my friends and they're probably going to get it. And it's a very easy, simple read. Now, before I give you the ridiculously long checklist for on-page SEO, I need to give you a little bit of a disclaimer. This is actually not going to be enough, believe it or not, for you to rank on Google in a high competition niche, because there are off-page SEO things you also have to take care of as well. I know, there's a lot to go through, but I'll cover it in other videos. For example, you need to have great page speed, you need to have great authority backlinks to your website, you need to have you need to have a lot of views on your website. If nobody comes to your website, then Google is going to think maybe this is not something that people are interested in. Other than that, you need to have, it has to be a user-friendly interface, and it has to also be very optimized for cell phones. Because you can expect that if it's a normal blog, then you could expect about 60-70% of your visitors to visit your page on the phone. But keeping that in mind, this is the complete checklist for On-Page SEO. So let's take a look at the blog post about how to invest in stocks. The reason why I picked this is because there are thousands of people who have written exactly about this subject. So the article that is on the top is probably going to be extremely SEO optimized. So it could be a very good example to take a look at. First off, in no particular order, one of the things you need to check when you are SEO optimizing is whether your URLs contain the search term. If we look at the top result, we will see that it contains the search term how to get into stocks or how to start investing in stocks. And second of all, the URL is it's less than 50 characters long. If you want to be on top of Google, that's really important because you don't want to have all of these generic URLs. Like, for instance, the one that we see up here. Obviously, this was automatically generated, and it just doesn't look that good, because if we just look at over here, I guess this part doesn't tell us anything. Right? So you could make this URL look a little bit nicer, just like this guy. Just by looking at this part, we can tell already what exactly we are going to get when we click here. Same thing goes for permalinks. You can see that the permalink is just like the URL. It shows like where you're going to go when you click here, but this is for display only. The only time you're going to see this part is in the search result page on Google. Same thing, for instance, here. This shows the breadcrumbs. Breadcrumbs means how you can navigate on the page in order to get to the article. For instance, if you click on Investopedia, articles, basics, invest 1000, then you will arrive at this blog post. And it's, let's see, basic 1000. You can see that this URL could be improved. It also tells me that this is probably not the most important thing that you need to focus on in order to SEO optimize your blog post. It's probably, I can tell you already, the most important factor that you need to think about is obviously the content. Perhaps not exactly whether your URL ends with an ASP. That's perhaps not the world's most important thing. Just keep in mind that your URL has to be very concise and preferably less than 50 characters long. Moving on, you need to have a really good description in your title, your H1. So we've been talking about the URL, and then this is the permalinks, and this is the H1, the title. We have mentioned it earlier. You should know exactly what you're going to get when you click here, and it should be something that will be incentivizing. It'll make you feel like, oh, this is probably something really interesting. Like for instance, a beginner's guide. That's a really good one, because obviously people who are typing in how to invest in stocks, they are probably going to feel a little bit like they don't even know where to start. So most of the people who have ever Googled this are probably beginners. It's not exactly like Warren Buffett or very super rich people who know everything about this are going to click and search for this. So it would be a good idea to have, for instance, a 10 step-by-step guide and step-by-step for beginners and that kind of stuff. So what I recommend you do is to take a look at what the other blog writers have done in order to rank on the top of Google, and take a look at how they have written their H1s, their meta description, which we'll talk about in a second, permalinks, and their URLs. You will usually notice that in the very beginning of them, you will see that you can find the keyword. So the meta description is this part, these 2 or 3 lines that in about 90 characters or less tell a little bit more about the blog post itself. If you don't write this, then Google will pick out a part of their text and just insert it automatically. This part does not automatically influence your SEO. It only influences your click-through rate. So you have these two lines to influence people to click on your link. So it would be great if you could write something like, this is the best blog for investing. This is the best. Here you will find exactly how you can achieve what you're looking for, in this case, investing. See what other people have written, and this is something that a lot of people usually forget or just skip altogether. A good example of this is, as you see here, they wrote too much and they didn't care to adapt it to these 90 characters, so you just see 3 dots, 3 dots, 3 dots. Yeah, pretty much all of these guys forgot about it. So it could also mean that it's probably not the biggest ranking factor if everybody on the first page just ignore it and still they're on the first page. One thing you need to check is whether you have embedded title tag modifiers. You don't need to remember that terminology, but what you do need to remember is that more or less half of the traffic you're going to get to your website regarding SEO is going to come from really long search terms. For example, if somebody types in how to invest on the Asian market during a recession in the summer or something like that, then obviously nobody has written exactly about that specific subject. But if you include words in your title like a complete guide or step-by-step how to invest and complete beginners and so on, then what you've shown to Google is that your information has such a wide range and it's so inclusive and covers everything that it might also include the thing that that person that made the whole long search query, that it might also include his information, and that's why your page is going to be lifted to the top for that person. So make sure that you have words that shows that you actually have a complete understanding of the subject, showing that you have a lot of depth and also a lot of width to your content in your title will include all of these searches that are very long tail, as it's called. The next thing you need to check is whether you have included your search phrase or your main keyword that you want to rank for inside of an H1, H2, and also an H3. And also within the first 100 words of an article. That way Google is going to know exactly what it is that you're talking about, if you're always on point. Because if you just keep talking about different things, like if you're talking about investment, but suddenly you're inside of all of your H2s and H3, you're only talking about saving money, then Google is not going to know exactly what is it that you're trying to rank for. So keep in mind that your keyword should always be extremely on point. Keeping that in mind, you also need to include inside of your H2, H3s, and inside of your text as much as possible LSI keywords and synonyms to your main keywords. Picture this, that if we are talking about if we're talking about football, for example, for 1 hour, then sooner or later you and I are going to mention the word goalie. So, and we're also going to mention the word points. We're also going to mention the word judge. So these are indirectly related to the main keyword, football. And Google actually looks for these kind of words inside of your text. And this is one way for Google to see whether you're just stuffing in your favorite keyword a million times inside of a blog post and then hope that it's going to rank. Google that was possible to do like a couple of years ago, but now Google has found its way to try to see whether this is a real human that has created this. And one way that it checks whether a human wrote an article or a robot is whether you have written a lot of synonym to the main keyword. And also if you are using LSI keywords, which means just keywords that are indirectly related to the main keyword. So let's talk images. I'm currently creating a blog, and there are 7 writers currently working on it, and one of the writers have done an amazing job, especially with the images. So let's take a look. first image in the blog post, how to soundproof an RV, we see that there is an RV that shows, we're obviously going to talk about that. It's actually good because people like me, I actually have no idea what an RV is before this article, because I'm not from the US and we don't use that term. Other than that, if we take a look at this picture, it's right underneath how using sound dampeners. Now, I don't even have to think about how to use them because it literally shows in this picture. What I really like about this picture is that it's showing somebody who's doing this, and it was taken by some iPhone or some phone that, and it doesn't look like this generic stock photo. So that's great. It also shows me how I should apply the stuff. And same goes with pretty much all the other pictures on this blog post. It really goes through step by step what you need to think about. Other than that, the images are resized so they don't take up much space, and they have what's called an alt text. You can click here and press edit, or just go into the settings in the platform that you're using, whether it's Magento or Shopify or whatnot, and put in the main keywords here. There are 2 or 3 reasons you should do this. Number one, it's so that Google knows what's on the picture, because Google is really bad at determining what's on pictures. It really doesn't know if the focus of this image is the hand, the RV itself, the sound dampeners. It just doesn't know. Other than that, it's a user experience thing, actually, because people who are visually impaired and can't really see what's on the picture, they can put their thumb on the picture and it's going to be read out. So it would be good if you actually write down what's on the picture. Now let's take a look at a bad example. In this blog post, I put in a couple of pictures. It's how to soundproof a sink, and obviously not the best picture, but it's of me standing beside a sink. And I wanted to show you what's happening if I'm going to change the size of the display. You see the picture just jumps down right away here, and now it doesn't really look that good, which is why I also recommend you to see how your images are going to be presented in the preview mode. Because in some pictures it could really look pixelated, like this one doesn't really look HD, so I need to check if it really looks good on my phone after the blog post is created. Next up is that you need to use hooks or something that'll keep your audience engaged in your content. For example, you could, in the beginning of every other paragraph, you could write something like, "The most important thing you need to remember is," or "Don't forget to." And if there's one thing you should remember from this article, it is that. If you have that, people will stay a little bit longer on your page, and that will signal to Google that people are a little bit more engaged, and it's probably good content. So it'll move you up in the rankings on the search result page. Next up is that you have to have a very clear structure in your content. And I want you to think of it in this way, that every movie has a couple of chapters, and every chapter is divided into several scenes, and every scene is divided into many, many cuts. The same way goes with H2s, H3s, and H4s, because we have the main title and then we have the subtitle. Usually if it's a long text, about 2,000 words, you can expect more like five subheadings. And every one of those subheadings is divided up more into more subheadings called H3s and H4s. So let's take a look at one of the blog posts that one of my writers have written. The most simple ways to soundproof a garage. Now, if we just take a look at these H3s, you'll see that it says acoustic plug for windows, acoustic blankets, soundproofing curtains, and then how do they work. Just by looking at this, you can kind of get the idea, all right, so the H2 is probably something to do with windows, right? And if we just take a look at all the H2s, which would be soundproofing a garage door, soundproofing the walls of your garage, soundproofing the windows of your garage, soundproof the floor of your garage, soundproofing the ceiling of your garage. If I just tell you those H2s, you can probably guess that this guy is writing about the H1, how to soundproof a garage. if you have a clear structure like this, then Google is going to know exactly what to rank you for. Not only that, if you're making sure that you're having this kind of structure, you're never going to deviate from the subject, which is really important. Because if this writer would start writing about how to soundproof, I don't know, the garden or the house and so on, because it kind of feels sort of relevant, then Google is not going to know exactly what you're writing about. What should the Google rank this article for? Is it garage or is it garden? What's going on? So keep in mind, have a very clear structure. So Google made it really clear why this is extremely important in their latest B.E.R.T update a couple of months ago. And they were writing about a specific fish that is called a cow. The way they can distinguish whether a person is writing about the fish or the actual cow that we all know is by looking at the LSI keywords and the synonyms and the structure of H1s, H2s, and H3. Now, if I tell you that my article contains things like words like fishing and boat and an H3 that says how you can catch a cow in the best way using this and that boat, then you will know I'm obviously talking about the fish. So that's why the LSI keywords and a clear structure in all your H1s, H2s, and H3s are really important. So let's talk feature snippets. A feature snippet is a very, very precise answer to a specific question that can be found on the very top of the search result page, which is this thing. It's also known as the position 0 of Google. Notice that this text doesn't really have that many filler words, and it can be pulled out of context. So if I take this text and I just copy it into a separate document, and you just read it, you're still going to get the information that it's trying to tell you. And the effect of this is that an article that was perhaps not really that well written, you'll see that in this article doesn't really contain that much text, but still, it's on the top of Google. Now compare this text with a text that is further down on position 4 or 5. You're going to notice that this text is a little bit longer, still has the information that we're looking for, has bullet points, internal links, external links, a little bit longer, and I think it does a little bit better job on SEO optimization because it also has a little picture that tells the story of how much water there is. Despite that, it doesn't have a feature snippet because the paragraph that contains the information cannot be put out of context, because if I copy it in here, you'll see that the first sentence right here, it says, how much water is that? Now, you don't know what this sentence is referring to because you don't know the context, which means this whole paragraph cannot be put into a feature snippet. And it has a little bit of filler words, such as 72% of the earth is covered in water. That's not what we asked for. We asked how much water there is on the planet. So that's why if the person who owns this article wants to have a feature snippet, has to work on that a little bit. So how do you create a feature snippet? Well, you make sure that one of your H2s, H3s, or maybe even your H1s has a question, and then inside of your article, you make sure that you answer, you put the answer exactly the way that a feature snippet is formed. You could also use something called a schema markup. I'm not going to talk about schema markups in this video because that's a whole nother subject in and of itself. But if you've written your feature snippet well enough, then Google will actually be able to, on its own, pick out your answer and put it on the very top of Google. And just like that, without waiting for a long time, you could reach the very top. You need to have at least 5 external links to high authority websites so that Google knows what your website is about. It actually judges what kind of content you have on your website, partly by just looking at the backlinks. As an example, I'm going to tell you about a website without mentioning what website it is. I'm just going to tell you about its backlinks. For example, it's linking out to a lot of YouTube videos that are about how to make perfect pastas, lasagnas, and whatnot. It also has a lot of links to a website where you can buy food and ship them from the store to your home. It also has a lot of links to food networks and informational blogs about food. So you've probably already guessed that this is a website about recipes for food or something like that. This is the way that Google is actually thinking. And if you don't have any links, or you just have links to Amazon, or you just have links to the same website, then Google is just going to think, oh, you're not adding a lot of value through your links. You're just thinking about one single thing, and you're not adding that extra value for further reading. So make sure that you have links to high authority websites. Same goes with internal links, which is a link from your website to your website. You should have at least 2 of them in order to help Google what's called crawlability, because Google has automatic bots that are crawling all over the internet to see if there are broken links, if it's a good website, if it's a secure website, and it helps Google understand the dynamic of your website, and how people should move around on it. As an example, one of my writers just finished a blog article about how to soundproof an apartment. And in the middle of the text, it just simply said, for more reading about how to soundproof a car, click here. And then that just didn't really make sense, because I just can't see a connection between how to soundproof an apartment and a car. And if that link was just put in there just because it fills up the criteria, have an internal link. But keep in mind that pretty much nobody ever is going to click on that link. And it is important to have extremely relevant internal links, because when people are clicking on it, it shows that people are engaged, that people actually want to know more and move around on your website instead of just staying on one page and then leaving. So make sure that every link you have, both internal and external link, is being sold, which I've mentioned before. It means that you have to tell exactly what the person is going to get when they are clicking on the link. As an example, a good one would be if you write, I've actually spent a week writing a 3,000-word article about how to soundproof a door. So if you're interested in that subject in particular, click here. Now, I told you something positive about that link and exactly what you're going to get if you click on that link. And that's an example of how you can increase the click-through rate on your links. The next point on the list is to check whether your content is evergreen and if it's deep. And by deep, I mean that it's written by an expert, it contains original information that is just not just regurgitated stuff that 100 other people have written, and also that it contains original research that not a lot of other people have done, so that you're bringing something new to the table. And a good example of this would be this video, because the rules of SEO that I'm telling you now will be relevant in many years to come. Not only that, I am an expert in this field, and I'm showing also that extra pieces of information that you probably didn't even think about. Because I bet that most of you didn't really think about that you need to sell the links, because it actually shows engagement on the website, which in turn will make your article go to the very top. Next up, make sure that you're writing very long content. And by that I mean at least 2,000 words in a mid to high competitive niche. But it also depends what niche. If you're trying to write better content or rank higher than Wikipedia for the keyword World War II, well, then their article is about 14,000 words long, so you have a lot of writing to do. On the other hand, the other day I had a client who wanted me to write about female football in Sweden. I only had to write about 500 words because that was already a couple of times more text than anybody else has ever written on the internet about that subject. So it really depends on competitiveness and how much everybody else has written about it. The next point is that you need to check if you have multimedia on your content, because there are many different kinds of people who are going to view your content. There are some people who just like to read a nice novel, or there are other people who like to see pictures that are explaining stuff, just like in the article that one of my writers wrote regarding the how to soundproof an RV. There are also people like me who are very analytical, and we want to see the graphs, the statistics, and all the numbers. And there are visual people who like to see a video. Now, a fantastic example of somebody who does a good job with this is Brian Dean on his blog Backlinko. He is one of my favorite SEO experts, and you can see that he has fantastic examples and pictures, he has graphs, statistics, and he usually throws in a really nice video that explains everything pretty concisely. There it is. Now, you don't have to go really overboard like this guy, it's just his thing, and that's what I really like him for, but just keep in mind that there are many different kinds of people that are going to view your content. If you're a fantastic writer, remember that people like me, we are not really into novels and that kind of stuff. We like the numbers, we like to digest things very analytically. So make sure that you have content for us too. Next up, make sure that your content is as readable as possible. By that I mean that it's, first of all, adapted to the cell phones, and that you're using chunking, bullet points, multimedia, and perhaps bolding, and make sure that it looks nice and neat no matter what kind of device you're showing it on. In order to check if this looks good on cell phones, you don't need even to use a cell phone. You can simply make your window smaller. So pay attention to what happens to the text and the picture. It's being resized nicely and neatly, and there are not just these huge blocks of text that you need to read. And it looks easy to consume, the whole text. You got the bolding there, bullet points, and everything is structured up nice and neatly. And one thing I recommend you to do is to write down in your content the most common questions people have about your subject, and also detailed answers. This will result in more people coming to your content for the answers to their questions, and it might result in a feature snippet or two. And also, the higher volume of people coming to your content will result in a higher page position on the search result page. Now, the question of how to find out which are the most common questions people are asking about your subject, that's a topic for another video. Next one is that you have to spell check. And it's really important because it really hurts the user experience. And I have corrected countless of SEO text. It really hurts the eyes after a while. And you can just fix it by having an app like Grammarly. I'm not an affiliate, I just strongly recommend you to get something that corrects your language. Another thing is that you should absolutely not plagiarize. It actually hurts the ones that you have plagiarized from and yourself. I guess right now what people even can do today is that you just translate from another language, or you copy text from physically published form, and then that's, since it's not registered digitally, then Google is not going to see that it's plagiarized. That works right now, but in a couple of years probably Google has figured out a way to see that that's plagiarism too, which means that no matter what way you're trying to plagiarize, sooner or later that will be seen as plagiarism, which means you will have to rewrite everything if you want to really work on your SEO. Next one is keyword density. Make sure that you are mentioning the main keyword about once or twice per 100 words. And about 1 or 2% of your entire content should consist of keywords that are related to the stuff that you want to rank on. Now, of course, there are exceptions. If the rest of your content is filled with LSI keywords or synonyms and amazing content on the subject, then you're good. And always, as I said before, make sure that your H1, H2, and an H3 has the keyword in it, and you're always on topic. Then you're going to be just fine if you don't follow this rule. The next one is called keyword cannibalisation, which means that 2 or more pages on your domain are trying to fight for the same keyword. Try to avoid this by only writing one piece of content that is extremely extensive about your keyword that you want to rank for. For example, the other day, I by accident told two of my writers to write about how to soundproof a roof. And they both wrote it. It was great content, but when I realized it, I had to either delete one of them or put them together so that I would have a more complete content about the subject, which is what ended up happening. Next one is that you should add social media sharing buttons to your content. And which social media you should link out to completely depends on your target audience. If you are writing a blog about celebrities and what they've been up to lately, and your target audience are just teenagers, then maybe LinkedIn is not the best social media platform you should link out to. Completely depends on where you want your content to be spread to. The next thing you need to check for is the language level. If the language level is too high or too low, then people are not going to stay very long on your website. They're not going to feel included, and Google will see that people are not interested in your website, which will lower the SEO score. So a good example of this is when my bloggers, the people who are writing for me, they are generally very smart people and very analytical. The problem with that is that since they're writing about soundproofing stuff, they tend to slip into and write about sound particles, which sound waves are good for sound absorption, and so on. So, and obviously nobody really cares about that, none of the readers. They just want to soundproof their stuff and be done with it. They just want to know how to do it. So I created a persona, a fake person that I wrote a lot of text about. And that text, I sent it to all of my writers. And it just describes this fake person called Jimmy. Jimmy is just an average American. He lives in the suburbs in the United States. He didn't finish college, he just didn't care, he wants to work more with his hands, and he decided to try to soundproof some of his rooms for fun, or just because he got a new baby. Now, the more I tell you about this Jimmy person, the more you will get a feeling that, yeah, maybe Jimmy really doesn't want to read about sound particles and like scientific studies of what is the best material for soundproofing. He just wants to get things done. Now, knowing that, you will know automatically whether you've done a good job or a bad job when trying to fix your language. Now, one of the most important things you have to check every time before you post any written content online is whether you have liked and subscribed to my YouTube channel. Now, you might be thinking it's not going to work and so on, but don't worry, let me walk you through step by step how to do it, and you're going to see you're going to rank much faster. I'm kidding, let's go to the next one. Next up, you have to check the competitiveness and the search volume of the keywords that you're trying to rank for. For example, if you're writing the blog article about how to ride a bicycle backwards while juggling, then yeah, congratulations, you will probably rank on the top of Google within a couple of days. But no one's ever going to search that, so why even bother? Same goes for if you're writing a blog article about which is the best camera for drones, then there are already thousands of huge companies that have written about that already, and they're going to outcompete you easily because they've been writing about drones for many years and their domain authority is that much higher. So it'll be pretty hard to climb up on keywords like that. On the other hand, I'm writing in a niche that is very mid-range regarding its competitiveness, the soundproofing niche, and I expect that the articles that I'm writing will rank on Google within about 9 months after they've been written. So, and regarding how to check the volume of the keywords that you are trying to rank for and the competitiveness, that's a whole nother subject in and of itself, and I'll talk about it in another video. Next up is that you need to show that you're an authority in your field. Now, this is especially important if you are in the health or finance sector, because Google is actively prioritizing people who are saying that they are doctors or finance experts. In other cases, such as mine, I'm not an expert in soundproofing, and yet I'm writing about it. One way that I'm trying to compensate that is by writing that my father and my uncle and my other uncle, they've built houses, and they have actually shown me a lot when I was growing up how to build, because I was literally living in houses that were being built. So I've actually, I know a lot about building, and I have a lot of pictures to show that. that. I'm also showing a lot of pictures in my blog where I am soundproofing stuff. So it gives the user experience of that I know what I'm talking about, but I've purposefully made sure that I'm not trying to convince anybody that I have some degree in carpentry or something like that. I'm just saying that I am somebody who has experience with this, and I'm just sharing my experience, what you should avoid and what you should not do when you are trying to soundproof everything around you. Another way you can go around this is by borrowing authority. You can do this by, let's say you're emailing 50 health experts in your country if you're writing about how to lose weight, and ask them about their tips and tricks. And I'm sure that at least 2 of them are going to write something substantial back. Then you take whatever they wrote and put it into your blog and make sure that you have specified that this is a citation from an email that this and this expert has written. Put their credential there and link to that person's either LinkedIn page or their own page. Another one is if you get your hands on a fantastic blogger that has written a lot about this subject and ask them to be a guest blogger. Or you could make a simple citation. You just copy whatever somebody else wrote on their website, a high authority website, make sure it's very clear it's a citation, and give the source. Just whatever you do, don't copy like gigantic clunks of text and put it in and hope for the best. That's not how SEO works. Just make sure you're using common sense when you're linking and citing people. And that's it. Now, thank you for sticking with me. We're going to wrap it all up by looking at how we're going to use this information in order to plan out a new article that one of my writers are going to write. So, the next blog post we're going to write on my blog is how to soundproof a floor. So let's take a look at the competition, see if we can do something better than whoever wrote this. So, first off, we can see there's no clear introduction. The H1 is quite a mouthful. So we're starting off pretty badly. Stock photos. From a user experience perspective, this looks like the person who wrote this just wants us to get over to Amazon, buy some stuff so that she can get some money. There's no personal touch here at all. It looks like not that deep content, stock photos. It would be nice if there was actually the person who's writing this would also, you could see her using this or make a personal video on how to do it. Stock photos. I want you to compare this article with the article about weight loss and remember the structure of that one. It's quite a huge difference. Here we have a product picture and stock photos. She's only using H2s. There's no clear subcategories, no bullet points, no multimedia. Another product picture. Stock photos, it doesn't look like, if I just read pretty much any one of these for the base layer, obviously you want to start with something along the lines of hardwood or tile to work with. It looks like pretty much all of this information doesn't look like it comes from somebody who has actually done the work herself. It just looks like it's been taken from all the corners of the internet. You just take a look at this over here and you'll see that she didn't really even take a second look at how this would look like on the phone or how it overall looks like. It doesn't look very finished. We take a look at this. This just looks like she tried to put in a lot of LSI keywords. I bet she's never used any of these materials and she doesn't have any experience in order to say what works and what doesn't and what kind of things you need to think about when you're using these materials. So let's take a look at the links. I don't see her linking out to any high authority website. And I guess here let's take a look at it. This is because of metal nails can echo vibrations. Misspelling, and also she's not selling the links. I bet that there is not a lot of click-through rate in her article. So to summarize, it seems like there's a lot of things that can be improved, which is great for me because it means that it should be pretty easy to do a much better article that will rank much higher than hers. Thank you for watching. If you want me to take a look at your website and make a video about it so we can all learn from the experience, then please leave a message down below and I'll get right back to you. Now, this is my first YouTube video I've ever made, so I'd be more than thankful if you could leave a comment on what you liked and perhaps what you didn't like so I can improve. And if you want me to cover another subject, then I'm all ears. I want to know from you guys if you want me to make a video about increased conversion rate or how to make a website or whatever you're more interested in. Until next time, take care.